The old Barnes farmhouse had been vacant for 17 years, yet the air inside clung to the lungs like wet burlap. Sheriff Daniel Grady had been through hundreds of crime scenes, but none that smelled quite like this: mildew, dust, and something faintly metallic that reminded him of old blood. His deputy, Carla Hayes, pushed open the warped attic door, flashlight beam cutting across the rafters. The K-9 Scout whined, nails scraping against the floorboards. When Carla coaxed him forward, he froze. Ears pinned, tail tucked. The dog refused to enter, and that was when Grady's stomach turned, because Scout had never balked at anything before. If you like stories that blend mystery, atmosphere, and raw human tension, consider following along for more. Now, on to the case itself. The farmhouse sat at the far end of Hollow Ridge Road, past the dead orchards where crows picked at fallen apples. The nearest neighbor was a mile away, and even that house looked abandoned most of the year. The Barnes place loomed like a relic, gray clapboards peeling, porch sagging, windows blind with grime. Daniel Grady lit a cigarette on the porch despite Carla's frown. "You ever notice," he muttered, "how some places don't rot so much as they wait?" Carla tugged her jacket tighter against the October wind. "This house isn't waiting. It's hiding something." She wasn't wrong. The reason they were here tonight wasn't routine. The farmhouse had belonged to Raymond and Eleanor Barnes, a couple who vanished in 2006. Neighbors said they packed up and left for Florida. Except no forwarding address was ever filed. No bank withdrawals. Their land taxes went unpaid until the county repossessed the house. And 3 nights ago, a hunter trespassing on the property swore he saw a figure moving in the attic window. Could be squatters, Carla had suggested, but Grady felt the knot in his gut tighten. He'd been sheriff long enough to trust that knot. Inside, the house creaked under their weight. Layers of dust softened every step. Old wallpaper peeled like curling parchment, and the air was sharp with the stench of long-dead mice. Scout sniffed along the hallway, ears twitching. He pulled them through the kitchen, past a stove rusted with grease, to the narrow staircase leading up. The attic door sat at the end of the second-floor landing. Carla reached for the brass knob, its surface cold and greasy with time. "All right, boy," she coaxed a K-9. "Up." Scout climbed 3 steps, then stopped. His body stiffened, fur bristling. He let out a low, throaty growl that vibrated through the wooden rail. Grady frowned. "That's new." Carla tried again, tugging the leash. Scout dug his paws into the floorboards, refusing to budge. His eyes fixed on the door. Not behind it, not above it, on the door itself, as if it were alive. Carla's hand wavered at the knob. "Sheriff, maybe we should." The attic door groaned open before she finished. Wind hissed down the stairwell, carrying a sour smell of rot and iron. Grady stepped past the dog, flashlight slicing into the black. Wooden rafters, insulation hanging like dead moss. Dust motes swirled in the beam. The space was empty, but it didn't feel empty. Carla followed, her breath quickening. Why wouldn't Scout come in? Grady's light swept across the wall at the far end. Something about it looked wrong. The boards ran uneven, the wallpaper misaligned. A bad patch job. "Somebody sealed this up," Grady said quietly. Carla ran her gloved hand along the plaster. Her fingers caught at the seam where 2 different textures met. Behind this wall, Scout barked from the landing, frantic, pawing at the floor. Grady drew his crowbar from the evidence kit. "Behind this wall," he echoed. They worked in silence. The first swing cracked the plaster, sending dust flooding the air. Carla coughed into her sleeve as fragments rained down. The smell intensified, sweet, rancid, like meat left in the sun. "Jesus," she muttered. Grady pried until a hole gaped wide enough to see inside. His light slipped into darkness. What stared back made his chest constrict. At first he thought it was insulation stuffed into the cavity. But then he saw the curve of a jaw, the hollow socket of an eye, a skull. No, more than one. "Carla," he rasped. "Call the coroner." She backed away, hand trembling around her radio. "How many?" Grady leaned closer. The cavity stretched floor to ceiling packed tight. Skeletons layered together like discarded mannequins. At least 6. Maybe more. Carla's face went pale. My God! A groan shuddered through the beams above. Both of them froze, listening. The sound wasn't the wind. It was footsteps. Someone was still here. They swept the attic with weapons drawn, but found nothing. No ladder, no trapdoor, no exit. Still, the boards had grown under weight heavier than rats. Place like this, Grady muttered. Sound carries weird. Carla nodded, though her knuckles stayed white on the flashlight. The coroner's van arrived an hour later. By then, news of the discovery had already spread. Hollow Ridge wasn't the kind of town where secrets stayed buried, even behind walls. As deputies carried out the remains, locals gathered by the fence line with lanterns and hushed voices. Some swore the Barnes couple had been kind church folk. Others whispered they'd always been strange. Eleanor with her glassy stare, Raymond with his temper. Grady overheard one old man say, I told you that house was cursed. Ain't no good ever come from that land. By midnight, the attic wall was gutted. 11 sets of bones were cataloged. Most small, too small. Children. Grady drove home long after Carla had gone. He poured 2 fingers of whiskey into a chipped glass and stared out his kitchen window at the dark. He thought of Scout's refusal, the way the dog had planted himself, as if to shield them from something worse. He thought of the Barnes couple, the neighbors who swore they vanished, and he thought of his own daughter, asleep upstairs, oblivious. A single question kept him from closing his eyes. Who put those children in the wall? And why now, after 17 years, did the house decide to give them up? Rain slicked the streets of Hollow Ridge the morning after discovery, turning the town square into a patchwork of puddles and headlights. Sheriff Grady parked outside the diner on Main, the place already crowded with locals hungry for gossip. He kept his hat low and pushed through the door. The scent of coffee, bacon grease, and damp clung to the air. Every head turned. Conversations dropped to whispers. Carla sat in a booth by the window, 2 mugs steaming on the table. She looked like she hadn't slept. Hair pulled back, dark circles smudging her eyes. They won't talk to me, she said as he slid into the seat. Every time I ask about the Barneses, they clam up, like the whole damn town agreed to stay quiet. Grady sipped the coffee, bitter and scalding. Hollow Ridge doesn't do secrets out of loyalty. They do out of fear. Fear of what? 2 old farmers. Grady didn't answer. Not yet. His gaze drifted across the diner. A cluster of men in work coats huddled near the counter, shooting furtive looks their way. He recognized Earl Tompkins among them, a former handyman who used to work the barn property. Earl caught Grady's stare and looked away too quickly. Back at the sheriff's office, the coroner, Dr. Lillian Price, waited with a stack of preliminary reports. Her lab coat was speckled with plastered dust from the attic. 11 sets of remains, all juvenile, she said briskly, though her eyes betrayed fatigue. Ages ranging from about 5 to 12. Cause of death isn't conclusive yet, but several skulls show blunt force trauma. Carla leaned against the filing cabinet, arms folded, and the timeline? Decomposition suggests different intervals. They weren't buried all at once. Whoever did this added to the wall over years. Grady rubbed his jaw. Cereal. Lillian hesitated. There's something else. We found remnants of fabric with the bones. School uniforms. Not from Hollow Ridge Elementary. The stitching matches private academies. Out-of-town kids. Carla's head snapped up. So they were brought here. Grady's stomach tightened. He thought of the Barnes farm, isolated, forgotten, a perfect place to make children disappear. By afternoon, Grady and Carla drove back out to the Barnes property, Scout pacing nervously in the back seat. Rain had eased, leaving the fields glossy with mud. The farmhouse stood silent against a backdrop of bare trees, shutters flapping in the wind. Inside, the attic still reeked despite ventilation. Boards were ripped apart, the cavity gaping like a wound. Carla scanned the room with her flashlight. Why seal them in here? Why not bury them on the land? Burying draws suspicion. Walls don't. Grady crouched by the cavity. His hand brushed the floorboards and found something wedged beneath, a strip of paper, yellow but intact. He unfolded it carefully. The ink had bled, but words were legible. Forgive me. I couldn't stop him. E. Carla exhaled sharply. Eleanor. Grady pocketed the note. His mind wrestled with the possibility. Eleanor knew. Maybe she wasn't a killer, but an accomplice. Or a prisoner. Scout barked suddenly, nails scraping against the boards near the chimney. His body stiffened, tail rigid. He whined and pawed frantically at the bricks. Carla rushed over. He's found something. Grady ran his hand along the mortar. One brick felt loose. He pried it free. Inside the cavity lay a small tin box, rusted shut. Carla held her breath as he forced the lid open. Inside, photographs. Dozens of them. Children posed stiffly, some smiling, some terrified. Polaroids marked with dates in black ink. Grady's throat tightened as he shuffled through them. The last photograph stopped him cold. It was of a girl with long blonde hair, maybe 9 years old. She wore a blue dress, and though faded, her eyes were unmistakable. Carla leaned closer. Sheriff, is that? Grady swallowed hard. That's Hannah, his daughter. The air seemed to leave the attic. Carla's voice dropped to a whisper. But Hannah's alive. She's at home. You picked her up from school yesterday. Grady's hand shook as he stared at the photo. The date scrawled beneath, it was October 1998. Hannah hadn't even been born until 2011. This doesn't make sense, he muttered. Carla steadied him with a hand on his arm. Then it's not her. Someone who looks like her, maybe a relative. Family resemblance. But Grady's got told him otherwise. The girl in the photo was his daughter, or someone who shouldn't exist. He shoved the tin shut, fury and dread knotting in his chest. We take this back. Quiet. No one else sees it until we know what the hell we're dealing with. Carla hesitated. You think someone's planning this? Trying to drag you in? Grady didn't answer. Couldn't. That night, Grady drove home on autopilot, headlights carving tunnels through the mist. His house on Maple Lane looked warm from the outside, porch light glowing, curtains drawn. Normal. Safe. Inside, Hannah sat cross-legged on the couch, coloring. Her blonde hair fell over her shoulder, just as in the photo. She looked up at him with a smile that nearly broke him. Hey, Dad, you're late. Grady forced a nod, his throat tight. Long day. He kissed her head, inhaling the scent of crayons and shampoo, grounding himself in the present. She was here, alive, real, but the photograph burned in his pocket like a brand. Later, after Hannah was asleep, Grady sat at the kitchen table with a bottle of whiskey. He spread the Polaroids across the wood grain, studying each face. Strangers, victims, and then her. His phone buzzed. A blocked number. He answered. Silence on the other end. Then a low voice, distorted, almost a whisper. You found the wall. Grady's heart thudded. Who is this? You were supposed to leave it sealed. The line clicked dead. The next morning, Grady and Carla met with Dr. Price again. She had grim news. I ran dental comparisons against missing children databases. 2 of the victims matched reports from out of state. One from Ohio, another from Pennsylvania. Both vanished while traveling through. Carla exhaled. Interstate. Grady's gaze narrowed. That means whoever did this had reach. And resources, Lillian added. Moving children that far, keeping them hidden. This wasn't a lone killer. It was organized. The word hung in the air like a noose. Carla broke the silence. You think the Barneses were part of a ring? Or they sheltered one? Grady tapped the tin box in his coat. And someone out there doesn't want us digging. That evening, they returned to the farmhouse, intent on searching the basement. The wind howled across the fields, rattling loose shutters like bones. Scout led the way, nose pressed to the warped floorboards. The basement door groaned open, revealing steep stairs into blackness. The smell was stronger here, mildew, rot, and something chemical. Carla switched on her light. Jesus, look at this. Rows of shelves lined the walls, not with canned goods, but with jars. Inside each, murky liquid preserved fragments of something. Fingers, teeth, bits of fabric. Grady's stomach turned. Trophies. Scout whined, circling the center of the room. His claws scraped at a large rug. Carla pulled it back, revealing a trapdoor bolted shut. Grady knelt, fingers brushing the cold metal. His pulse hammered. Whoever had used this place wasn't done. Not by a long shot. He looked at Carla. Get back up. We're opening it. But before she could move, the trapdoor rattled. From beneath, something knocked. Once. Twice. Then came a sound that froze the blood in Grady's veins. A child's voice. Weak. Trembling. Hello. The voice was faint, muffled by wood and earth, but unmistakably human. Please help. Carla froze at the base of the stairs, flashlight trembling in her grip. Did you hear that? Grady's throat had gone dry. He pressed his ear to the trapdoor. Another knock, softer this time. Then a stifled sob. There's a child down there. Carla fumbled for the radio. We need backup now. Grady stopped her. His instinct screamed. No radios. Not yet. Are you insane? There's a kid under our feet. Exactly. And if there's still someone keeping kids down there, we spook them, we risk losing everything. Carla glared but obeyed, jaw tight. She braced her light as Grady unbolted the trapdoor. The metal shrieked, echoing through the basement. When the hatch lifted, a stench of damp soil and sweat spilled out. A ladder descended into darkness. At the bottom, pale faces blinked up in the flashlight beam. Children, 3 of them, eyes wide, gaunt with hunger. Oh my God, Carla whispered. The oldest, maybe 12, shielded the others. His voice shook. Are you cops? Grady's chest constricted. Yeah, you're safe now. But even as he said it, unease gnawed at him. These kids weren't supposed to exist. Not after 17 years of silence. They lifted the children out one by one, wrapping them in blankets from the patrol car. The youngest girl clung to Carla's neck, trembling like a rabbit. How long have you been down there? Carla asked gently. The boy answered, voice flat. We don't know. No windows. No clocks. Just lights turning on when it was time to eat. Who brought you here? The boy's eyes darkened. He glanced at Grady, then looked away. We're not supposed to say. Grady crouched. Kid. Whoever told you that isn't here anymore. You can tell us. The boy's lips parted. A man with gray hair. He called himself Mr. Barnes. Carla's pulse spiked. Raymond Barnes is dead. Vanished years ago. The boy shook his head slowly. He was here last week. By the time backup arrived, storm clouds had swallowed the horizon. Deputies rushed the children to the hospital. But Grady couldn't shake the boy's words. Raymond Barnes. Alive. And if Barnes was alive, someone in Hollow Ridge had been helping him hide all these years. Back at the station, Carla paced the bullpen. We need state authorities, FBI, everyone. If Barnes is running some kind of trafficking ring. Not yet, Grady interrupted. He'd been staring at the Polaroid of Hannah, his hands trembling. If this runs as deep as I think, the Bureau swoops in and we lose control. We lose the truth. Carla narrowed her eyes. This isn't about control. This is about your daughter. He met her glare, anger simmering. You saw the photo. You tell me how a picture of Hannah exists 13 years before she was born. Carla hesitated. Maybe it's not her. Grady slammed the desk. Don't patronize me. For the first time, he saw fear in Carla's eyes. Fear of him. That night, after sending everyone home, Grady drove back to the Barnes farmhouse alone. Rain slashed across the windshield. Thunder rolling over the ridge. He killed the engine, sitting in the dark with only the creak of the farmhouse for company. Scout whined in the back seat. The dog pawed at the door, restless, as if urging him not to go in. But Grady went anyway. The basement was silent, the trapdoor gaping like a wound. He followed the tunnel beneath, flashlight beam bouncing against dirt walls. The air grew colder, damper, the smell stronger. At the end of the passage, a wooden door waited. Its surface was carved with deep gouges, as if someone had clawed at it from the inside. He pushed it open. Inside was a chamber lined with cages. Empty now, but stained blankets, chains, and bowls told their story. And on the far wall, nailed crookedly, was another Polaroid. Hannah, smiling, holding today's newspaper. Grady staggered back. His vision tunneled. How? She was home. He'd tucked her in hours ago. A voice drifted from the shadows. Calm, familiar. You shouldn't have come alone. Carla stepped forward, pistol aimed steady at his chest. The betrayal cut deep in the gun. Grady's voice cracked. You knew. Carla's face was hard, unreadable. I didn't just know. I helped cover it. 17 years ago, when I was still green. You think Barnes did this alone? The whole damn town fed off it. Judges, business owners, cops. We all looked the other way. That's why they vanished without a trace. Because we made sure no one came looking. Grady's stomach twisted. Children, Carla. You let this happen to children. Her jaw clenched. I told myself I was protecting the town, keeping order. But the truth? I was protecting myself. She stepped closer, gun unwavering. And now you're too close. That photo of Hannah, you think it's coincidence? It's leverage. They own you now, Daniel, just like they own me. Grady's hand drifted toward his holster. Carla's eyes flicked down, and she cocked the hammer. Don't. Scout's growl rumbled from the tunnel entrance. The dog silhouette filled the doorway, teeth bared. Carla's aim wavered just slightly. It was all Grady needed. He drew and fired. The shot cracked like thunder. Carla staggered, eyes wide with shock, and collapsed against the dirt floor. Grady stood over her, chest heaving, gun smoking in his hand. Her lips moved, blood bubbling at the corner. They'll never let her go. Then silence. By dawn, Grady was back home, his clothes damp with rain and sweat. He crept into Hannah's room, half expecting her bed to be empty. But she was there, asleep, hair fanned across the pillow, chest rising and falling. Real, alive. He sank into the chair by her bedside, exhaustion crushing him. The Polaroid still burned in his pocket. He couldn't explain it. Maybe he never would. Maybe Carla was right. Maybe the town was rotten to its core, bound by secrets that would never see light. But looking at Hannah, Grady made himself a vow. He would burn the whole system down before he let them touch her. Outside, dawn broke over Hollow Ridge. The farmhouse still stood on the ridge, silent, waiting. But for the first time in years, the sheriff of this town wasn't looking away. And though the cause had already carved scars in his soul, Grady knew one truth with bone-deep certainty. The walls always give up their secrets. Eventually,